Okay, Salem's Lot 2024. Where to begin? I don't want to oversell it and pretend like this is the worst film in the world. At the same time, the only reason it seems to exist is just to sort of occupy space. The entire reason that this film exists is to just kind of take up space on a streaming service. This movie was shelved for something like 2 years, and if the original intent was to show this film in theaters, I think I would have had a lot more of a negative reaction. But as it stands, it's just something you're kind of just supposed to turn on. You're already paying for the HBO Max, and you're like, oh, Salem's Lot, whatever. Horror movies, even when they're bad or unremarkable, horror movies tend to just sort of go down easier. They're much more watchable. They fulfill a much more sort of again. It's not that it's not entertaining. You put vampires in front of me, I say, well, sure, why not? But at the same time, this movie is so thin. There is something so thin about Salem's Lot 2024. It feels like there is either a lot of it was cut out or a lot of it was rearranged beforehand. Something feels off. Something feels thin. Okay, so for the uninitiated, Salem's Lot is the story of Ben Mears. He returns to his old stomping grounds. He returns to Jerusalem's Lot, aka Salem's Lot. But at the same time, bad luck for him, a vampire has also showed up at the same time. And so this vampire, Barlow, he's taken over the town. He's converting people into vampires, yada yada, etc., so on and so forth. Now, first thing is the characters. The characters in general feel very thin. Each character gets a sort of initial moment. They will sort of have one kind of introductory moment, but then the characters just sort of fade into the background and kind of become engines for the plot. So for Ben, he shows up. He's kind of a fish out of water. He's doing research for a new book. He's kind of looking into the accident that killed his parents. A drunk driver killed his parents. But then, again, as with every other character, it doesn't really amount to a character arc. It amounts to sort of information. We are given information about this guy, but it doesn't sort of result in any arc necessarily. You would think this would need to be a story about a guy coming back home, confronting his past demons, maybe a sort of conflict of values. There's a guy named Floyd Tibbets, and at one point he says something to the effect of, Go back to New York, writer boy," and you would expect something more of that. But as it stands, we just sort of get a initial introduction to the guy, and then he just kind of becomes a faceless vampire killer. I don't remember the book too well. I'm not going to do any comparisons between this and the book. It's been so long since I've read Salem's Lot. I couldn't remember the thing if I wanted to. Ben's relationship with Susie is also very thin. This is kind of where I started to notice it. This is where I started to notice of just like, something's missing here. Something's off. So we've got this sort of meet cute at the beginning. Susie, she's all the actors are fine enough. She's a charming lady. So we get this kind of endearing kind of meet cute where she's like, "I'll be at the drive-in." And you're like, okay, that's something to latch onto in a story. But then this relationship is interesting because it is an entirely, there's no physicality to it. There's no romance. There's no physical emotion involved. Maybe they couldn't avoid all the intimacy coordinators and other such nonsense that movies seem to require these days. It's weird to see what is presented as a romantic relationship that doesn't really have any romance to speak of, that doesn't have any physical affection on screen, so that when she eventually dies, it's just like, well, I don't really feel much. What am I supposed to take from this? You've got all these characters. You've got Ben, Susie. You've got the doctor whose name escapes me. You've got Mark, the kid. You've got the school teacher, and they kind of join up and become this kind of ragtag group of vampire hunters. But if you're trying to condense an entire book down to an hour and 50 minutes, you really need to, I think, sort of focus your attention on a few key elements, whether that be the romance, whether that be the kid. Like there's a scene at the beginning where the kid is like being bullied. He just gets randomly sucker punched by some other kid, and so Mark, the kid, just kind of beats this other kid up. And again, you would expect this to maybe be followed up on in some way. Like, but what does this reveal about the kid's character? It reveals that I don't know, he's tough, I guess, but all in all, like it doesn't amount to anything. So the characters feel sort of thin and two-dimensional, but then also kind of the action and the violence and the way the movie actually approaches horror, something feels weird and incomplete. It does sort of attempt a sort of atmosphere. There are moments that are sort of nice to look at. That's one positive I want to give the movie. There are moments that are visually interesting. There's sort of a part at the beginning where in the side mirror of a truck, it kind of forms a kind of split screen between this guy and it's the basement. And there's a moment where these kids are walking through the woods and the woods are in silhouette, and it's a very sort of storybook type image. There are some interesting images, I guess, but there are some images that are just sort of, they feel like they're just sort of throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. For instance, there's a transition from like a guy's opening the Bible, and then the transitions to a guy opening a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And it's like, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that's for. And then there's a sort of transition with a clock, a sort of swinging clock. And to put it another way, there are moments where the director or the cinematographer are sort of punching above their weight class when it comes to trying to create interesting visuals. There is some stuff that works and is interesting, and then there's other stuff where it seems like this is just kind of empty style. But again, returning to those moments of horror, like the film will start to sort of try to cultivate an atmosphere, but then the actual sort of payoff, the payoff always feels deflated. Like the movie feels like it is working around a PG-13 rating, which is weird because, this is a direct-to-streaming type situation. You would think there would be less concern of trying to satisfy some sort of rating or whatever, but there's so much where like the payoff will happen off screen, or there's a part where the doctor is like stabbing this vampire and there's no blood, and she even says like, there's no blood. There is just so much that feels toothless. You've got no romance, you've got no action to speak of until the very end for some reason, where the Ben stabs Barlow through the head with a stake, and it's like the only sort of moment of like graphic violence, and it's just the whole thing is very tonally inconsistent as far as the horror or the scares are concerned. Okay, and the last thing that just kind of confused me is you've got multiple characters. I believe it's multiple characters. It might just be the one character, but the sheriff in particular, he keeps saying like how bad the town has gotten. At one point he says, the vampires could only take over the town because of how bad it had gotten. And it's just like, what are you talking about? The town seems fine to me. It seems pretty quaint, seems pretty easygoing. Stephen King's books, one of the recurring themes is kind of the unwholesome underbelly of middle America. Stephen King's books are often full of these very goofy stock characters. There's the abusive alcoholic father. There's the kids who are bullies. There's the racists. And while Stephen King's sort of stock cast of characters is kind of, it might be sort of corny and tawdry, at least that's something. Whereas this film adaptation, it kind of hints at it here and there. Again, there's the guy who's a go back to New York author boy. There's the bullies. But on the whole, the town, like, again, the characters keep saying like, the town's seeing a bit of a decline. And it's like, well, just because you said so, you're going to have to show me a little bit more than that. Altogether, the movie just feels thin. It feels flat. It feels underdeveloped or else meddled with by external forces, whatever. It ends up where a lot of this direct-to-streaming service ends up. It's just sort of one of a indistinguishable churn. It's fine to put on if you like vampires, if you're already paying for HBO Max and you don't know what else to watch. But other than that, as soon as the credits roll, you're going to forget you ever watched the thing. You're going to wonder why it existed in the first place. Okay, Salem's Lot 2024. It wasn't that good.